Hey guys, GhazzyTV here with another Path of Exile video. And in this one, I'm going to talk about the gear progression that you want to do for your pure Spectre build in 3.21 Crucible League. In this league, we're using the Forged Frostbearers. These are the Crucible Spectres, and hopefully we'll be able to use them in future leagues as well. But for now, this video will tackle the gear progression you'll be doing to make sure you have a smooth progression from starting off in campaign with the build into the low budget state and going forward to medium and then later the high budget. Now, at the time of this recording, I don't have a high budget build POB sorted. However, we do have a low and medium budget sorted now. And these POBs are linked in the descriptions inside the build guide below, and obviously they're using the Forged Frostbearer. So without further ado, I want to tackle one little thing before we tackle the gear progression, and I'm going to show you that in the POB. Let's just crack into it. This is the low budget Spectre POB for 3.21 Crucible using Forged Frostbearers. They are now available in POB. Thank you so much again, Local Identity, for sorting that. We'll be leveling this build using Absolution till you're about level 65, 70-ish, and that's when you can move over very smoothly into the Spectre build. However, as mentioned in the build guide, if you get something like a Bitter Dream, you're able to use the Spectres as early as you can get your hands on them, and if you have troubles finding these Spectres, make sure you join my global channel in-game by typing /global 6666. The Bitter Dream is a great weapon to enable your Spectres earlier than planned, and they can simply be socketed with a Raised Spectre Gem, Greater Volley, and Spell Echo. This is all covered in the build guide, of course. This video will tackle gear progression. However, I want to tackle a little bit of a detail, and that is how to show the full DPS of your actual minions. So in the low budget version of this build, you can see that we have 3 Spectres. So what you want to do to calculate your actual damage output is to calculate their actual amount of projectiles, since we are collateral splashing these, times the amount of Spectres you have. In this case, we have +4 projectile, which means 5 projectiles per minion, and we have 3 minions, which means that our count, by checking the full DPS, should not be 3 minions, because that's no damage at all. You want to put in 15, since they are shooting 5 projectiles each that will all hit their single target boss fight targets. That's 15 projectile, and now we can see that the damage output in the low budget is about 2.8 to almost 2.9 million Shaper DPS. Pretty crazy. However, we're going to talk about gear progression. In the gear progression, I want to make sure that you start off with something like a Tabula Rasa, because getting a Delve modifier chest piece, which you can farm yourself, to getting the minion-related nodes inside the Delve encounters, to give you a +1 to maximum Spectres is obviously a preferable choice. But to keep the budget down, you can buy yourself a Corrupted 6-link or a Tabula Rasa, and I do believe that this should be the very highest priority unless you're using a Bitter Dream, upon which I would look into maybe even using that as long as the damage feels okay till you get that extra Spectre chest piece, because at 5-link, one of those chests are better than a Tabula Rasa, so that might be a very good addition if you want to try that out. However, if it doesn't work out and doesn't feel good, go for the Tabula or a Corrupted 6-link, and then focus on getting a +1 level of spell skills or level of minion skills with an open suffix for a Triggercraft wand. This will make the build very smooth to play, and also scales your damage output significantly because of how the Forged Frostbearer scales extremely well when it comes to gearing, when it comes to their level scaling. This is also a rather interesting topic when it comes to the high budget version of this build, simply because the high budget version was expected to use a Shaper Elder influence Giga Helmet like we normally have done in the past couple of years. But because of the Forged Frostbearer scaling with levels, that is not going to be the best option. We'll be POBing this live on stream in the coming days. So again, we prioritize the +1 level of skills with the Triggercraft 1. We could go for a recovery on Block Shield. However, this is not something you want to do until the very end of your gear progression for low budget. Instead, we want to focus our next step to getting a +1 level of minion skills helmet. Make sure there is a life roll on it, and don't skip out on any necessary resistances and or attributes if you're not at the appropriate cap. 75% for elemental rest, and for attributes, it depends on the gear you're wearing and the skills you're using. Outside of this, the rest of the gear is just generic. If you can get some minion damage on the gloves, that's great, but not a priority. But what is a really high priority is getting, at the very least, 1 bone ring. That is because the implicit minion resistance is helping our utility minions staying alive by capping their elemental rest in combination with Commander Darkness, which provides 30% elemental rest to you and your minions. Outside of this, the next step after this would be to go for a Darkness Enthroned. And the reason I skipped talking about the boots here is very simple. You can choose to use a rare pair of boots. The reason the Bones of Valor is here is because it's a very simple and cheap option to just get started, but they don't provide any resistances and the movement speed is kind of low, the HP is very low, but they do scalar damage output. So if you want to run a Bones of Valor and be lazy, go for it. I would personally run a rare pair and not have that extra damage because these Spectres do enough damage as it is. Jewels for this build, since the minions do pure cold damage, any open socket you have for this build will strictly be making sure that you have a life roll on them and then adding minions deal additional flat cold damage. Now the better variant is to ignore the flat cold damage and instead go for increased minion cast speed, which can be a bit more expensive, or even better, the minion damage when you've used a minion skill recently, which is incredibly strong. However, they also cost a lot more compared to these type of jewels. The Darkness and Throne, I would recommend that once you decide to go for one of these, that you buy a cheap one for just a handful of chaos, 2, 3, 4, maybe 6, 7 chaos at most, with a low roll, since they can roll between 50 and 100%, and then go for a higher percent scaling one at a later stage when you can afford it. So that's basically the cover of the low budget. I do want to talk a little bit quick about the large cluster, which should be added as soon as you don't have anywhere else to put your skill trees. So when you come to that point, you want to buy yourself any sort of passive large cluster, normally for builds like this, but in this build, we want to buy the cheapest shit jewel you can find with 8 passive. And the reason for that is because we're just chasing more jewels, but making sure that the nodes gives us damage. The notable renewal, for example, is completely useless. You might as well just not have it. Feasting Fiends has some nice touch to it by giving your minions leech, but they shouldn't really have any problems in dying. Their HP is absolutely disgusting. And yeah, I just don't feel like they have any problems for surviving at all as I played the build on stream. However, again, you want to pick this up when you don't have anywhere else to put your points to fix the tree as it's shown in the guide, and then go for these cluster nodes, and then pick up the large cluster when you don't have anywhere else to put the points in. The medium budget version is rather specific, so I'm going to show you the medium budget real quick here. And this is, again, to show you the DPS display. We're looking at the Frostbearers, which are with a greater volley, shooting a massive amount of 5 projectiles each. And in this version, we actually have 5 minions. So that would be 5 times 5, I believe, if I count that correctly, which would be 25 projectiles. As you can see, the DPS is a little higher now, 14.5 million. In this version, you want to make sure that you have a 6 link, plus 1 maximum number of Spectres, which can only be found or purchased from Delve encounters. Now, this plus number of maximum Spectres allows you to get the 5 Spectres because you get 3 Spectres from the gem itself when the gem is level 25, another one from the chest piece, and another one from the actual tree called Death Attunement. Outside of this, you want to make sure that now at this point, you need to make sure that your wand is a +2 level of wands. This is to get to that point where your minions are, your race Spectres is level 25 or higher for the damage scaling, and also to make sure you get that extra Spectre. It's equally important that your helmet now also comes with a +2 level of minion skills instead of +1. Again, don't forget to have a life roll on these items, and make sure that if you have any resistance or attributes needs, that they are covered as well on your rare items. This is also the point where you want to make sure to look into minion damage on the gloves and potentially upgrade the Stygian Vice, but normally I would prioritize the other pieces and then get myself an amulet with plus level of all skills with HP and again attribute or resistances if needed, and then oil the charisma so that you can use the auras. If you're having issues with mana reservation and don't have enough to get that charisma going, simply skip running things like the Defiance banner and the Precision, because the Precision is just a bonus thing and more a placeholder for the higher budget leader. So by turning off a Defiance banner and Precision, you can skip the oil charisma to get the build into this budget and then gather enough currency to enable those auras through this oil later. Outside of that, you could get yourself some implicit modifiers on your boots. However, I would recommend going for something like plus level of Spectre gems from an Elder influence pair of boots instead, because of the value of this. The higher budget version of this will be going for a +2 elevated version of that. At this point, you also want to be looking into the possibility of getting yourself an Unending Hunger. Depending on the market price, this can be very good to put in the low budget as well. But since it tends to fluctuate a lot, I decided to only have it included in the medium budget version. Fortress Covenant will be used and Quickening Covenant in case they don't cost too much currency. If they do, simply settle with a rare jewel. However, the large cluster jewel in this version is much bigger, similar to the mage skeleton build that we've made a gear progression video for as well. This would be the very last upgrade you put on the Spectre build as well, and simply use the old version of the cluster jewel that you wanted. And when I say the very last, I kind of ignore the flask, because the flask bottle of faith is a super luxury item, and it really isn't something you should ever prioritize in a gear progression. I am mainly talking about the rest of the gear pieces and not the flask. So you can ignore getting a bottle of faith. Just make sure everything else is settled with the build. That's when you smack in a bottle of faith for that extra juice of damage at the end. Outside of that, it's not much more to say. The build's very straightforward, and we're going to move into a higher budget version, which I currently don't have a POB for, but I will make a video as soon as that is done, and it will be included in the written guide. So if you want to be first on checking out the higher budget version of this, either tune into the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/GhazzyTV, as I'll be playtesting this and POBing it live on stream, or you can just bookmark the build guide by checking out the link in the descriptions below. If you like this type of videos with gear progression, let me know in the comments below as well, because it's something that I feel could be very useful for newer and casual players alike. But it's only good if you guys actually appreciate the content. If not, it's just a waste of time for me to do. So let me know what you guys think of it. Hit the like button to unsubscribe for more content, as it really helps out the channel. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. So till then, as always, stay safe, keep rocking.